It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace,
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about sovereign citizens. And a lot of people have mixed opinions, and there's actually a lot more of these guys out there than you thought. Now, I have to preface this with there is nobody, I don't think you'd find two guys more distrustful of the government than me and Kevin.
Yeah, that's
I
100%.
think I think there's a very good chance that the government actually, I know for a fact the government has tons of overreach and oversteps their bounds and their authorities at every turn.
Mhm.
So it makes the sovereign citizen idea and argument sound very appealing. It makes it sound like, oh, well, these guys think that the government's full of shit and they're just willing to make a stand on it. And maybe that's the case, and maybe it gets a little twisted and whatever. I am going to try and keep my opinion till the end, but I was telling Kevin, I'm not sure I'm going to make it past the opening credits here. But, if this is your kind of thing, I'd say like and subscribe now. So then when you find out my opinions at the end, you might want to like unlike it. But it's better to just go ahead and hit the like button now. And then that way, it ends well at the end. One of the big things. So I was reading a book, a fiction novel called Mulan Labe.
Mhm.
And it's by your favorite author, Boston Tea Party. Good luck trying to find it. I think it was getting to the point where it was like $50 on eBay at some point. I had bought it years ago, but yeah, it's not an easy find, and it's not on Audible, which really, I mean, if something's not on Audible, I mean, how are
Yeah.
you gonna take
Gonna
that
listen to
in,
that?
right? You got to read paper words. Like that's
Yeah.
get out of here, right? So anyway, and they make a lot of arguments. However, I will say in the book they set things up where like the cops are like, and of course it's the ATF, and they're like really overreaching.
Yeah, everybody can get on the bandwagon and pay in the ATF.
It's like, hey, that's not a hard argument to sell, right? So because they've been known to have a little bit of overreach, but maybe
Mhm.
that's just my own crazy radical opinions. All right. So, what is a sovereign citizen? Like, actually, before we get into how did they form? How did it even come to be? So, it was actually back in the 70s when people first started kind of talking this way. And there's a guy named William Potter, and he basically preached that sheriffs were the only real law and the real government. And I don't think he had all that much traction early on, but then like as the 80s started to come, and remember they were like foreclosing on farms as well, because remember Carter and that with Carter going, the economy wasn't doing so well in the late 70s.
Mhm.
And people were starting to not be able to pay their bills, and they were starting to lose their farms. And it's kind of easy when people are desperate to get them to kind of get momentum into a movement of, hey, maybe you don't have to pay that back. That's not legitimate. The government's not all they're cracked up to be. Now, it's later escalated. There's no like whole movement of sovereign citizens. It's kind of more an idea and philosophy, and then broken into a bunch of like groups who kind of take on that philosophy.
Right.
And it's not just all white nationalists. There's actually whole groups, the Moorish group. There's a lot of groups that are different ethnic backgrounds. It's not just all white guys that are crazy.
Mhm.
And I didn't even say they were crazy. I'm just saying it's, that have these extreme views that differ from the government,
Mhm.
right? And, like I said, you guys have heard me talk. You know that I can get on board differing from the government. So where do they find their legal foundation? Kevin, do you have any insight there?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically the idea is that the federal government was usurped
Oh,
by a conglomerate of corporations. So the federal government is illegitimate.
all right. Now they believe this happened way back. It's not just like it wasn't just Microsoft.
No.
This goes back to 1871.
Right, right.
They have something called the Organic Act. And what the Organic Act was it was basically how the hell do we deal with Washington D.C., right? Washington D.C. was a swampy mess, underdeveloped, no real government going on, and it just was a mess. They were like, how do we get sewers? How do we get roads? How do we do anything? Because there's nobody in charge here because it's not a state.
Mhm.
So they passed the 1871 Organic Act. Okay. And basically, the argument is that they created a municipal corporation called the United States Inc., distinct from the original Constitution. And like, this is where they believe that it kind of all went awry.
Mhm.
And it operates under commercial law, with the citizens basically being debt slaves, and your birth certificate and social security numbers are kind of the big part of that. They're your like straw man identity.
Right, right. So this is a false identity for you. Basically, this is you incorporated, not you as a person, right?
Yeah.
That's why your birth certificate, your name is written in all capital letters, right?
You
So
see
that's
how it's
not your
starting to go
name.
wrong?
Yeah, that's your straw man identity,
Mm.
right? The fake you.
Now, we had talked, they kind of say that it's admiralty law. So
Right,
like
maritime law, right?
maritime law. That's how they get there, because that's kind of
That's
how
the
they
only legitimate government left.
right, exactly. You know, we're just a bunch of pirates out there, right? We're
Mhm.
just out there doing our thing, and it kind of falls apart. The Moorish Americans often cite treaties like 1787, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco. Um, Basically, a lot of these things are kind of how to not pay taxes is honestly a big part of it,
Yeah.
and how to not be subject. And that's one of the things. That's where I start to get conflicted. And this is where things start to get a little hairy. And the thing is, the majority of sovereign citizens are preppers and survivalists and people who listen to a show like this. So I don't know. Maybe Kevin, maybe half our audience is going to go away if we misstep here, if we use the wrong words.
Uh-huh.
So you want to be careful what you say.
Mhm.
I would say I definitely think the government has tons of overreach, and I think you can make a legitimate argument. You know, often I'm like, well, that's unconstitutional. And when I say that, I'm like, yeah, but they don't follow any other things that the Constitution says. So I don't know why that's the one that I think they're all going to turn around and the court's going to go, oh, yeah, you were right. This
Yeah.
one. Yep.
Mhm.
So I get it. I understand passion and distrust for a government. That said, one of the big arguments that sovereign citizens make is they're not obligated to their mortgages and different things a lot of the time. And this is not in all instances. Like I said, it's a big variety of groups here. But one of the things with that is if I'm not obligated, like you sign that paper, like
Mhm.
it may be a really shitty deal, but you made a commitment to pay it.
Yeah,
And
but did you
no,
sign it in black or blue ink?
I
Or did you sign it in red ink? Because if
And
it's
do you
renting,
use the name
right,
from your birth certificate?
right, right. Because the government actually has a secret account for
Mm,
every American citizen, which
I
has
keep
about
getting emails about that and seeing things
yeah,
on
has
Facebook.
about $600,000 in it. And you just have to know how to access it, right? Your
The
corporate,
secret way.
your strawman identity has that budget. So if you sign a document that says you're going to owe them less than $600,000, then you don't have to pay that back because
Oh,
that's your straw man. It comes out of your straw man's fund, right?
okay.
So there's a couple of tricky parts here. So some of the basics are, distrust of or the government's illegitimate, right? And
Right.
we've talked about that. Straw man theory, which is basically your identity is separate than the identity the government has from you. That's the straw man identity that the government has. You don't have any obligation to that. You have a right to travel, right? Wherever you want. You don't need a passport. You don't need a driver's license for any of that stuff.
We are free men, Kevin.
That's
America
your
is free.
God-given right to travel, right? And immunity to all federal law.
Mm.
So those are some of the basics there.
Now, like I always, this is one of my things about the Bill of Rights, right? I used to think, all right, so the federal government controls, you know, they can't overstep your Bill of Rights. All
Mhm.
right. They can't, come after your guns. They can't come after your free speech. They can't invade your privacy. But the states are not held to the same standard. They can be more restrictive than the federal government. Now, let me finish though before you guys panic. Um, and so the states can do more things than the federal government can, and that's why, like, you get like property taxes and different things like that. That's that the federal government is not imposing on you. Now, I always thought, well, all right, part two of that is most state constitutions have the Bill of Rights as their beginning to their constitution or
Right.
somehow incorporated.
Mhm.
Um, that said, as you go further than that, the Supreme Court has later decided that no, states can't go beyond the Bill of Rights. Like the Bill of Rights is protected for everybody, and it's not the state. The way I read it, I interpret it as the states can go beyond, but it doesn't matter because the Supreme Court said the federal government, everybody is subject to the Bill of Rights and they
Right.
can't supersede it. That's the way it ended up. And that only is pretty recently, like in the last like 15 years, that it kind of, because that was the big thing with like states having really restrictive gun laws and then the federal government not. But anyway, so there is that. And I agree, we are all kind of protected and they do overstep a lot there. And that's, that's where you get. But I would also say if you agree and commit to debts as an honorable man, I feel like an obligation personally that I have to pay it back. Like to me, I'm like, ooh, bankruptcy. No, I mean, obviously you come to a point where you don't really have a choice, and that
Right.
may be, but and there has to be a way to sort it out when you're screwed, that's how it works. And people get defrauded and different things happen. And, we all know that illness can wipe out your life savings and your ability to pay. We can all see the future. But on the flip side of that, you still have an obligation to try and uphold the commitments that you make. Your word is your bond. Is it not, Kevin?
That's right.
All right. What are you thinking? So now they seem to argue, like you said, sovereign citizens make an argument about free travel. Now, I gotta say, there is some like really restrictive laws and people. So there are laws that if you have a license in a state, that it's honored in every state. Like think of how you have a marriage license, right? If you get
Mhm.
married in New York, you're still married when you move to North Carolina because they honor licenses from other states. But I
Right.
have noticed that states are kind of limiting that at every turn when they try and do that. I don't mean with your marriage license. I mean with different things like, oh, you're driving in California. Now your car has to conform to California, even though you're driving under a New York license plate
Hmm.
or something like that. So they do, sovereign citizens do have their own version of a license plate.
Let's
And
see. What do we
they,
got?
I would say they're, and they basically say no driver's license or insurance required, traveling, not driving.
Right.
And this is a whole like semantic thing that you can get into. And because under the Constitution, we have the right to travel. And, since they put roads everywhere, and that's the only free space in between private property, and in
Hmm.
order to conform, you got to kind of drive a car, Kevin.
Yep.
Um, I would argue that maybe you could walk or ride a bicycle, but I don't think that that's really practical.
It's not practical in most rural places. That's right.
Now, people also come up with their own state ID cards.
Right.
And these again kind of go with that protected right to travel, first class private sovereign American. I like first class. I mean, that's how I would be, is first class.
Hmm.
Um, and they put their information out there. Now, let's talk about that. So one of the big things is what happens at these traffic stops. Um, I mean, I thought about it. I was like, man, I could just play clips of all this stuff. It doesn't really work for a podcast, but man, it makes YouTube exciting, right?
Hmm.
Where you have these traffic stops. And Kevin, we've talked about on this show a lot. What happens when you say, well, I'm not required to show you my ID because you're not, I didn't commit a crime and you're not charging me with a crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So apparently that does not protect you from tasers.
No.
Um, yeah, cops just tase you and drag you out of your car, and then you go to jail instead of just getting a ticket.
And a lot of times you piss them off. They like to wrap their baton on your window
Hmm.
and then kind of drag your ass out. That
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
end well either. There's a lot of videos of that, and it ends badly. And to be honest, I'm looking out for your safety, guys. I think, and the problem is when you have some more extreme groups that have more radical ideas, then when you try and argue with legitimate ideas, then it's like, oh, you're one of those.
Hmm. Right, right.
They immediately shut down and dismiss. One of the secret clues I have for you guys is it turns out cops are not always well versed in the law, and they're not especially
Yeah,
understanding how the laws get there.
yeah, and you can actually quote the law to the cop and then be like, "Where do you get your license? Facebook?" They
Right.
also don't have a law license, so don't put up with that shit from cops. They don't know
There's
what the
always
fuck
a
they're
TV
talking about
show with
either.
the lawyer who wants to be a cop. I
Uh-huh.
always see him on those cop shows. There's always like one that's like really a lawyer, so you never know.
Hmm.
Uh, but that could just be on the cop shows. I don't know. I've never met one in real life that's a
No, it's
lawyer.
not real.
You know, they're
No.
like, if I can get the paycheck, I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah, yeah. Why would I work for $40,000 a year when I can get a job making $200,000 a year? Different
Or I
different pay
just
grade.
couldn't pass the bar.
Yeah.
Was that maybe
I mean, that's also a real
the
thing.
option, right?
I
Um,
spent $90,000 getting a degree in law, but didn't actually learn anything. So
But
now
because
I'm
I
a
was
cop.
high, I didn't get the bar. I didn't get
That's
the
right.
information, right. So that's definitely a possibility. But so let's talk about it. So arguing the law, one, the cop doesn't care, right? He most likely knows the law that he pulled you over for,
That's
right?
true.
He
Hmm.
most likely, you know what? Hey, you didn't come to a complete stop at that stop sign. Hey, you were going 25 over the speed limit. I think 90% of the cars could be pulled over because you were going 3 miles over the speed limit or higher. Um, I think it's very rare that we're all like right on the line, or even, an equipment failure. Maybe my I was going to say my speedometer isn't working, but we'll even segue into my tail lights out. The different
Mhm.
lights are not working properly on the car. If that's the case, then you need to just kind of go along, right? Like, if you go along and then have your argument with the court, you're so much less likely to get beat down to the ground. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. So
honestly the more appropriate place to have that argument.
I haven't
Because
gotten a ticket in years and years, but that's just because I go to court every
right,
time, you
right.
know?
I don't
And a
go
lot
to
of
court.
times
I
cops
pay
just let me go. I think it's the beard,
the
and they're
beard.
like, "This is a good looking dude. Let me stop infringing his rights."
Is that what it is? Or do they look at you and do they think, you know what? This guy is somebody who's going to try and fight me and I don't want to get shot.
No, I
That
mean, a
could
lot of the time they just like give me a warning and tell me not to drive so fast, but
drink
whatever.
less, drive slower.
hmm
Yeah, okay. All
I
right.
got pulled over last week. Um, and they got me out of the car. They had me do the whole DUI thing.
I've never
They,
had
they're like,
that.
they're like, are you sure you haven't been drinking? And he asked me like 5 times, and I was like, I've been working for the past 14 hours, dude. Like,
Right.
I'm not. Nope. But they made me stand on the side of the road in front of all my friends and neighbors driving
Oh, yeah.
past while I'm out there.
Very embarrassing.
And then they got the breathalyzer out, and they're like, oh yeah, I guess you haven't been drinking anything.
That's weird. So
That's
I'm
that's
told.
awkward that I spent 30 minutes fucking with
Right.
you.
Right.
And
Right.
yep.
I had a friend of mine at work got pulled over and they detained him and they kept him there for, I think, 2 hours on the side of the road, then took him to jail. And they were like, oh, because there's a warrant out for you, but it was somebody else.
hmm
Like they had the same name, but I didn't read Junior at the end of the name or,
Right.
like that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. And a different address, different social security number, different date of birth,
Right.
all
But that
those things.
doesn't mean you're
Like,
not in jail. You still go to jail.
you're like, how do I get those 3 hours back?
Right.
You know? And they're like, well, that's part of the living in civilized society. And that's the thing. We make a ton of accommodations living in civilized society.
hmm
Um, and a little more back on the sovereign citizens here is so in 96, there's the Montana Freemen siege.
Yeah.
And this was an 81-day standoff. Basically, a couple of guys, Leroy Schweitzer and Daniel Peterson Jr. I got to get his birth certificate name just right here. They had a 960-acre farm that they called Justice Township. No, it's Justus, not maybe it's like just US.
Mm.
See what they did there? I don't think that's what they were doing, but that's how I inferred it right there. They had about 400 people living on this compound, and they basically decided they were a sovereign nation and that they were separate. Now you're thinking, well, the government had to go fuck with them because, this is America and we can't have anybody seceding and whatever. Well, that was really not why the government went to go fuck with them. The government said, hey, you guys defrauded banks and individuals out of $1.8 million.
hmm
And they were like, we'd really like to get that money back. And
Yeah.
that's kind of back to the, like I said, where they kind of say, well, the mortgages, we don't really want to pay them. And here's where it gets even crazier. It's a real common practice amongst sovereign citizens, at least over the years. I don't know if so much today, but they have something called paper bombs. Now, let's talk about that. I probably can't even say that word on Facebook or something.
Yeah, we just got banned.
We
So
just got
basically
banned.
what that is, it's not doesn't have anything to do with explosives,
No, not
right?
in any way. No, that is actually where you put a lien on something against the judge,
Right.
or you put a lien because you're like, well, they're acting impure. I decide that I
Right. And
need to
so
fine
you can
you.
levy fines against
Yes.
anyone you want,
Yes.
right? If they infringe your rights, right?
Exactly.
There are penalties for infringing your rights, and you can levy it, and then it causes all kinds of chaos. When you put a lien on somebody's house,
Yes.
it causes huge problems to get that straightened out.
Because they can't move. They can't
Mhm.
sell it. They can't. It just becomes a big mess.
Right.
And that's So paper bombs is liens on officials. They obviously, people are going after them because they have fake license plates. They have the right to travel arguments. Um, it basically, a lot of people jump on board with this because, and that's actually where most of the trouble comes from. I'm sorry, I got a little sidestep there, but a lot of the trouble comes from it's kind of fraudulent to put all these liens and judgments against people, or it is fraudulent.
Mhm.
And that's where they end up like causing a lot of expense and disruption. That's where they get into a lot of trouble aside of the contact with people.
Mhm.
I have talked to several cops about this, and they were telling me kind of their take was, yeah, when one, I was shocked there's a lot more of these guys out there. It's estimated between 100 and 300,000 Americans subscribe to this theory of sovereign citizens. So it is quite a bit. And that's the thing is I don't know the intricate details of what your group believes if you're one of these guys, and yours might be 100% right on,
Mhm.
right? Cuz like I said, I can easily make a solid argument of why the government is illegitimate. I just think either one, you're not doing a good job marketing your ideas, or two, people are just really shutting down your websites. And, maybe you're just not having websites because you don't want your information out there. I mean, that
Mhm.
could be it. But you'd think with like anonymous and stuff, you'd be able to like kind of put things out there. And, a lot of what VPNs, Kevin, isn't that where the world happens? Everything is I'm over in another country. This isn't me.
Mhm.
Um, it could be that. But the thing is, I feel like there are a ton of very legitimate arguments that could be made to
Yeah.
why the government is overreaching. But I also feel like the side of the road in the dark when the cop doesn't know who you are and you
Yeah,
guys
it's not
don't
the time to
trust
argue
each
it.
other, it's not the time to argue it. Now, I'm totally cool with saying, look, I'm not going to stop you. Do whatever you want, but I don't give you my consent. I don't believe you have the legal authority to search my car. I think this is an illegal traffic stop, but I'll comply. I'll do whatever you want. You want my driver's license? I don't think I'm obligated to hand it to you. And I will do it because I don't want to get shot for fear of, bodily harm, but I'm not giving it to you because I think it's legitimate, right? That kind of thing, no problem. I don't mind making a stand, but it's not worth getting shot when it doesn't end well when your government has helicopters and your government has fast cars. And, it just let's be cautious where we approach those things. I would say in court, that's a whole other game. If you want to make the argument and fight a judge, hey, go do battle.
Yeah, so
I would recommend a lawyer because you just pay them good money and they just make things go away.
yeah,
Um,
that works. Don't be your own lawyer. That's where most of these sovereign citizens fuck up, is
we need to
they
find a guy
represent
who,
themselves.
right. We need to find a guy who's an excellent lawyer who can argue the sovereign arguments, because I feel like that could exist. Like you could
Mhm.
get there where in court, you just need a really smart ass lawyer,
Yeah. Yeah. So the big problem though is the FBI classifies sovereign citizens as a domestic terrorist threat due to their history of violence and illegal activities.
Hmm.
So being a sovereign citizen kind of makes you a terrorist,
But
but
so does being a veteran. So
yeah, but everybody's terrorist now. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like,
that's what we do.
If you
So
make
we are.
everyone a terrorist, nobody's a terrorist. That word doesn't even mean anything anymore because everybody's terror. Antifa doesn't exist. Not a real organization, but they're terrorists.
But they're
So,
terrorists.
like, whatever, dude. That word doesn't mean anything anymore.
Aye. But that's the kind of thing that gets cops on guard and wanting to shoot you when you start mouthing off.
Right.
And so you kind of get into trouble. So, like I said, let's take a cautious approach and save our fighting for the courts. That's the thing. So I was talking to one of the cop guys. He was saying, these are pretty common. And he's like, look, obviously, if you suspect there's real danger and you don't want to let a guy who's possibly a convicted felon or whatever get away, who, is on the run or something, you need to take action and you can't be a coward as a cop and you have to do your job. However, if you think this guy's just out on a normal thing, I feel like his ID is real, I know who he is, or I know who he is off his legitimate license plate, then you can just write him the ticket and slap it on the glass. And if the guy doesn't show up to court, then you get all your buddies together and you can go out and do your thing, right? It just, we don't need people getting shot. I feel like that's really the answer, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's better if we all don't have holes in us.
I mean, that's a good way to spend your life, is not without extra holes, Got enough. God gave me enough of them. I don't need any extra ones. Now, let's talk about some sovereign citizens that things went sideways for.
All right.
One of them, Terry Nichols. Do you remember Terry Nichols? He was a good buddy of Timothy McVeigh.
Oh, Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
All right.
Timothy McVeigh was upset about the situation in Waco, right? Wanted to get some revenge on that.
1993. All right. It's Waco. Yep.
Right. So he bombed the Oklahoma City federal building and got some help from his sovereign citizen buddy, Terry Nichols. Terry Nichols was convicted and I believe is still in prison.
Okay.
Timothy McVeigh, they gave him the chair, didn't they? Or lethal injection. He's done. He's dead. They killed him.
Yeah.
But Terry Nichols, he didn't actually help make the bomb or really plan it, but he was a good buddy, and I think he knew it was going to happen and didn't do anything about it. And that's what got him in prison. I don't think he's ever getting out. Gordon Call, tax protester, armed group killed during the 1983 shootout with federal agents. William Potter Gale. He's considered to be the founder of the sovereign citizen movement, right?
All right.
He's been around a long time. He was there from the beginning, and he basically was the one that kind of formulated most of the basic ideas behind the sovereign citizen movement.
Okay. Now, is he an attorney? Do we know?
No.
We don't know.
No. But I mean, what does that mean?
Right? It's just a piece of paper from the man, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Shame.
Doesn't make you any better than me.
All right. Whoa. You basically conform to the government, Kevin. That's not so impressive.
Now, one of the things that they'll bring up a lot is maritime law, right?
Yes.
So they believe that the only actual law that exists is maritime law internationally.
Okay.
Or nationally, right? There's no laws that supersede the county law. County is as high as it goes, according to them.
Okay.
So, to me, that's kind of strange because that still leaves you with taxes, like property taxes and things like that. And county law has laws against, not paying your mortgages and things like that. But, I don't know. I guess if a county sheriff shoots you, then that's cool.
That's legit.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So now, just to be clear, there's 300,000 people that are sovereign citizens.
All right.
Which every one of them has like a different view on
Yes,
how this all
absolutely.
works, right?
So that's the thing. I'd love if you guys like one, if you have a directive of actually like philosophy or something, could you point me to the website? Could you
Right.
show me? Because I went everywhere searching out like what are their core beliefs? Like, how do I argue in court if I'm a sovereign citizen? How do I go and make an argument? Because they're all like, quoting things, but it's very scattered and hard to connect. So I had a hard time. So if you do have some stuff, then you could reshape my mind. You want to prove my audience here wrong, and share your comments, share your ideas and where we could find the information, and let's have a discussion. Let's, shape things into, what it should be. Let us know. But otherwise, you have concerns, Kevin. Any last thoughts on sovereign citizens? Don't get shot.
Yeah, if you're a sovereign citizen, keep it to yourself when you get pulled over.
Yeah, that's private information.
Save it for court because they're just
All
going
right.
to beat the shit out of you.
Tasers are bad. It's not fun.
Yeah,
So
it's not fun.
with that, I would say stay safe. Another thing is you guys should check out our website, survivalandbasicbadasspodcast.com. We have some cool gear on there. Plus, you can sign up for our email list. And I think I have some stuff coming out pretty soon that's pretty cool. So you might want to make sure you get on there. We do have a lot of cool t-shirts and stuff. What do you got?
If you have any thoughts on sovereign citizens or any episodes you'd like to see us cover, let us know at preppingbadass@gmail.com. We do read the emails. We do respond to emails.
A little slow, but we
let us
respond.
know.
So with that, I'd say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.